to do a little follow-up to the permaculture experiment. It's August. Things have really grown. However, we've had some pretty unusual weather patterns this summer. So I just want to show you how that has affected the experiment, what the positive effects and negative effects have been of permaculture in general, and also this dry weather we've had. And I've been pulling weeds. One of the lessons, one of the takeaways of this whole experiment. So, first of all, that's the amount of weeds I've pulled today. Mostly from this side of the garden. Most of which, remember this? I said I was going to lay fallow this year. Well, I couldn't take it. It was too weedy and too ugly. I had to do something about it. So I planted, not rows, but I scattered seeds all up and down this kind of quadrant. And I just threw out some seeds from an acorn squash and a butternut squash that I ate. And they came up. So I had to do something about those. So I had to build trellises here and here. So although this is really not part of the original permaculture experiment, it's all nature, right? So that's what we're looking at today. What happened? What did Marcia learn? So this whole plot became full of weeds. I had a pumpkin come up here, and it grew. That's why there are weeds here. That pumpkin grew many, many, many feet, produced one perfect, beautiful little round pumpkin, and then pooped out. Once I picked the pumpkin, the entire vine died. So that's what this plot is. Now, what I learned from kind of growing things haphazard and randomly is that you really shouldn't do that, because when vines, particularly squash vines, start growing, they get really ungainly and very, very long. So I had to do something. So my husband and I put up an impromptu trellis. It was kind of an, oh my God, what are we going to do moment. And I did get one acorn squash so far. As you can see right here, I've got two more. There's one. And there's one. And I may get a few more. However, the one I picked yesterday came out this morning, and that vine is dying. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's normal. I'll have to Google it later and find out if you pick a squash, the whole thing dies. I don't know. It can't be. I mean, there's more squashes coming out, right? Anyway, moving on. Wildflowers have done very well. And it looks all romantic and pretty. But a couple of words of caution, when you just throw down seeds and they start coming up, you have to keep weeding. This weeding was unbelievable, because if you don't weed wildflowers, you get all kinds of other taller things coming up, and they shade the wildflowers. So really the only wildflowers that survived were the ones that could get above the tallest weeds. And when I say tallest weeds, these things are 3 and 4 feet high. So lesson learned here, put down mulch. I don't know what the order would be, but weeding this has been kind of a chore. But I do have to also add, see, only the tallest flowers came up. But oh my gosh, it's been wonderful having them, because they're just full of butterflies and bees, and they've been lovely. So even those few that came up have provided us with a lot of pleasure and entertainment. So this vine, if I turn around this way, the second vine that I planted, again, ate some butternut squash, ate some acorn squash, hollowed out the squash, brought the seeds out here, stuck them in this fertile ground, because the ground was already our garden. And they came up. So let me go around this way and show you what I have. So I have to say, even if I only get that one squash, well, 2 squash, 1 acorn and 1 butternut, it was just so much fun watching these things grow. Look at that. It's already the size that they are at Whole Foods. So I probably could go ahead and pick it. I think I've got a few more that might make, as they say here in the South, but I'm not really sure. So Let's get over to the permaculture experiment. Lots of lessons learned here. This is my old culinary herb bed. It's been here for years, and it's just trucking on. You just plant these things: sage, rosemary, chives, rosemary. That little bushy thing right there is oregano, more chives, and thyme. I've had to replant thyme. Again, this is not really part of the permaculture experiment, but it all works together. Permaculture is, and I'm going to repeat myself here, but it is kind of letting things grow as they would in nature in a more controlled way. There's passion vine, my suffering echinaceas, which I'll have to transplant, bee balm, those are old. This is not part of the experiment. But here on this side, under these two fruit trees, I also planted lots of good stuff in the permaculture experiment to try to help the fruit trees. A couple of main points are straw was a bad idea. I figured that out within 2 weeks of planting my permaculture. And the reason straw is a bad idea is because, number one, snakes love to hide in it, which really bothers me. But, you know, they're nature, so have to put up with it. Had to learn to kind of be able to look at them. But the main thing is the grass. Look at the grass. It absolutely crowded out some of my plants, some of the lower growing plants. The things that have done well are the taller things, like salvia, verbena over there. The things that can rise above the grass. But my goodness, pulling this grass has been an absolutely monumental challenge. And I finally, it's Bermuda grass. Nothing kills it. Obviously, in a year of drought, the things that can tolerate extreme heat and very little water did well, like the coreopsis. Even the comfrey did okay, but I did water quite a bit just to keep things alive, because this all costs money. So you don't want to let everything die. But I also chose plants that were pretty much native to this area, and things I knew could tolerate heat. Some of the things that I planted in the shade really needed more sun, because you can see they're getting a little bit of like fungal stuff on them. Another thing I learned was that if you have bugs that are eating everything, you can spray neem oil on it. Neem oil is considered organic. It works really well. I use it on my roses out front. And it has worked well on the fruit trees to keep the bugs off, what few apples we had this year. And everything has been pretty healthy. It's just that it's just been a really hot summer, so kind of peakedness is to be expected. So once again, comfrey, look at the size of that. Comfrey is for nitrogenating the soil. Right now I'm just in wait for fall mode. In fall I will cut these so that they release the nitrogen they store in their roots, these comfrey. And I will lay the leaves all around the fruit trees. I will also wait for the first freeze, and then I will come out and I will cover all of this area where you see straw, this kind of round area between the two trees. I will cover all of this with wood chips on both sides, for these two trees and for those over there. So there were quite a few, there was a real learning curve. I also learned that I have an armadillo that likes to come out and stir up the straw to find the grubs. Things that were positive, oh my gosh, may have been a little like unkept with the terrible grass over here, just everywhere. Battling the Bermuda grass was awful, but the positives are, it's very, I don't know, natural. It just feels so good to have all this stuff growing, even the weeds. I mean, everything was so healthy this year. But all in all, with the beauty of everything that's growing in this garden, I would say this was a rousing success. My husband, who was not necessarily uncooperative, but certainly not like enthusiastic in joining in, even he says, wow, this is like the greenest and the most productive this garden has ever been. And this was kind of if you'll pardon the expression, kind of half-assing it. This wasn't really a concerted effort. Ooh, there goes a pretty butterfly. Don't know if you caught that. So this is me signing off in my beautiful, well, okay, let's say green little plot. I'm very pleased with what we've done so far. Every year will get a bit easier as I learn more. And I think that this has been more fun than a barrel of monkeys. It's also been more work, but it's really fun. So I encourage you to go out, start planting things that grow in your environment, monitor your backyard. You have to kind of get to know your little microclimates, where it's wet, where it's dry. Plant things that you're going to use often closer to the house. Be sure to get your nitrogen fixers in there. Plant some pretty flowers to attract the good insects.